Chapter 12 of Sanditon by Jane Austen. Charlotte had been 10 days at Sanditon without seeing Sanditon House. Every attempt at calling on Lady Denham having been defeated by meeting with her beforehand. But now it was to be more resolutely undertaken at a more early hour, that nothing might be neglected of attention to Lady Denham or amusement to Charlotte. "And if you should find a favourable opening, my love," said Mr. Parker, who did not mean to go with them, "I think you had better mention the poor Mullins situation and sound her ladyship as to a subscription for them. I am not fond of charitable subscriptions in a place of this kind. It is a sort of tax upon all that come, yet as their distress is very great, and I almost promised the poor woman yesterday to get something done for her, I believe we must set a subscription on foot, and therefore the sooner the better. And Lady Denham's name at the head of the list will be a very necessary beginning. You will not dislike speaking to her about it, Mary?" "I will do whatever you wish me," replied his wife. "But you would do so much better yourself. I shall not know what to say." "My dear Mary," cried he, "it is impossible you can be really at a loss. Nothing can be more simple. You have only to state the present afflicted situation of the family, their earnest supplication to me, and my being willing to promote a little subscription for their relief, provided it meet with their approbation." "The easiest thing in the world," cried Miss Diana Parker, who happened to be calling on them at that moment. "All said and done in less time than you have been talking of it now. And while you are on the subject of subscriptions, Mary, I will thank you to mention a very melancholy case to Lady Denham, which has been represented to me in the most affecting terms. There is a poor woman in Worcestershire whom some friends of mine are exceedingly interested about, and I have undertaken to collect whatever I can for her. If you would mention the circumstance to Lady Denham. Lady Denham can give if she is properly attacked, and I look upon her to be the sort of person who, when once she is prevailed on to undraw her purse, would as readily give 10 guineas as 5. And therefore, if you find her in a giving mood, you might as well speak in favour of another charity which I and a few more have very much at heart, the establishment of a charitable repository at Burton-on-Trent. And then there is the family of the poor man who was hung last assizes at York, though we really have raised the sum we wanted for putting them all out. Yet if you can get a guinea from her on their behalf, it may as well be done." "My dear Diana," exclaimed Mrs. Parker, "I could no more mention these things to Lady Denham than I could fly." "Where's the difficulty? I wish I could go with you myself, but in 5 minutes I must be at the Mrs. Griffiths's, to encourage Miss Lamb in taking her first dip. She is so frightened, poor thing, that I promised to come and keep up her spirits, and go in the machine with her if she wished it. And as soon as that is over, I must hurry home, for Susan is to have leeches at 1 o'clock, which will be a 3 hours' business. Therefore, I really have not a moment to spare. Besides that, between ourselves, I ought to be in bed myself at this present time, for I am hardly able to stand. And when the leeches have done, I dare say we shall both go to our rooms for the rest of the day." "I am sorry to hear it indeed, but if this is the case, I hope Arthur will come with us." "If Arthur takes my advice, he will go to bed too, for if he stays up by himself, he will certainly eat and drink more than he ought. But you see, Mary, how impossible it is for me to go with you to Lady Denham's." "Upon second thoughts, Mary," said her husband, "I will not trouble you to speak about the Mullins. I will take an opportunity of seeing Lady Denham myself. I know how little it suits you to be pressing matters upon a mind at all unwilling. His application thus withdrawn, his sister could say no more in support of hers, which was his object, as he felt all their impropriety, and all the certainty of their ill effect upon his own better claim. And Mrs. Parker was delighted at this relief, and set off very happy with her friend and her little girl on this walk to Sanditon House. It was a close and misty morning, and when they reached the brow of the hill, they could not for some time make out what sort of carriage it was, which they saw coming up. It appeared at different moments to be everything from the gig to the phaeton, from one horse to four, and just as they were concluding in favour of a tandem, little Mary's young eyes distinguished the coachman, and she called out, "'Tis Uncle Sidney, mamma, it is indeed." And so it proved. Mr. Sidney Parker, driving his servant in a very neat carriage, was soon opposite them, and they all stopped for a few minutes. The manners of the Parkers were always pleasing among themselves, and it was a very friendly meeting between Sidney and his sister-in-law, who was most kindly taking it for granted that he was on his way to Trafalgar House. This he declined, however. He was just come from Eastbourne, proposing to spend 2 or 3 days, as it might happen, at Sanditon. But the hotel must be his quarters. He was expecting to be joined there by a friend or two. The rest was common inquiries and remarks, with kind notice of little Mary, and a very well-bred bow and proper address to Miss Hayward on her being named to him, and they parted to meet again within a few hours. Sidney Parker was about 7, 8, and 20, very good-looking, with a decided air of ease and fashion, and a lively countenance. This adventure afforded agreeable discussion for some time. Mrs. Parker entered into all her husband's joy on the occasion, and exulted in the credit which Sidney's arrival would give to the place. The road to Sanditon was a broad, handsome, planted approach between fields, and conducting at the end of 1/4 of a mile through second gates into the grounds, which, though not extensive, had all the beauty and respectability which an abundance of very fine timber could give. These entrance gates were so much in a corner of the grounds or paddock, so near one of its boundaries, that an outside fence was at first almost pressing on the road, till an angle here and a curve there threw them to a better distance. The fence was a proper park paling in excellent condition, with clusters of fine elms or rows of old thorns following its line almost everywhere. Almost must be stipulated, for there were vacant spaces, and through one of these, Charlotte, as soon as they entered the enclosure, caught a glimpse over the pales of something white and womanish on the other side. It was something which immediately brought Miss Brereton into her head, and stepping to the pales, she saw indeed, and very decidedly, in spite of the mist, Miss Brereton seated, not far before her, at the foot of the bank which sloped down from the outside of the paling, which a narrow path seemed to skirt along. Miss Brereton seated, apparently very composedly, and Sir Edward Denham by her side. They were sitting so near each other, and appeared so closely engaged in gentle conversation, that Charlotte instantly felt she had nothing to do but to step back again and say not a word. Privacy was certainly their object. It could not but strike her rather unfavourably with regard to Clara, but hers was a situation which must not be judged with severity. She was glad to perceive that nothing had been discerned by Mrs. Parker. If Charlotte had not been considerably the tallest of the two, Miss Brereton's white ribbons might not have fallen within the ken of her more observant eyes. Among other points of moralising reflection with the sight of this tete-a-tete produced, Charlotte could not but think of the extreme difficulty which secret lovers must have in finding a proper spot for their stolen interviews. Here perhaps they had thought themselves so perfectly secure from observation. The whole field upon them, a steep bank and pales never crossed by the foot of man at their back, and a great thickness of air in aid. Yet here she had seen them. They were really ill used. The house was large and handsome. 2 servants appeared to admit them, and everything had a suitable air of property and order. Lady Denham valued herself upon her liberal establishment, and had great enjoyment in the order and the importance of her style of living. They were shown into the usual sitting-room, well proportioned and well furnished, though it was furniture rather originally good and extremely well kept than new and showy. And as Lady Denham was not there, Charlotte had leisure to look about, and to be told by Mrs. Parker that the whole-length portrait of a stately gentleman, which placed over the mantelpiece, caught the eye immediately, was the picture of Sir Harry Denham, and that one among many miniatures in another part of the room, little conspicuous, represented a Mr. Hollis. Poor Mr. Hollis! It was impossible not to feel him hardly used, to be obliged to stand back in his own house and see the best place by the first constantly occupied by Sir Harry Denham. End of chapter 12.